Then she had the audacity to remind me that I had an OBGYN appointment the next day, and spoiler alert, I didn't go. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we have my lovely husband Matthew joining us.
Hello.
And we are going to be discussing this little man's birth story. On September 20th, the day that I was 37 weeks and 3 days pregnant, I woke up and I remember I told Matt, like, babe, I feel like it could be soon because my body is gearing up for something. It just feels different. And I remember this feeling from right before my water broke with Esther, and so I paid specific attention to it this time around. And basically I just had some pre-labor symptoms, some Braxton Hicks and stuff like that, but nothing too intense, nothing of note. They started to get a little bit more intense, even though they were more like still inconsistent. Intense enough that we decided to go ahead and pack our hospital bags. We had Luke's bag ready, but we had decided that one of the things to help us like stay at home longer before going to the hospital would be packing our bags. So we went ahead and did that. I took a shower and, went to sleep sort of wondering, could this be the start of things? And then around 3 a.m. I woke up and the contractions had basically fizzled out except for one every once in a while. But the main thing that was different was that I woke up because I was so hungry, like when you get nauseated because your stomach is like so empty and it's just like gnawing on itself basically. And that was the only time that it had happened to me this pregnancy, even though I was pretty late in pregnancy. And yeah, that was definitely notable that I was so hungry. So I went downstairs, had something to eat, did the labor activating video because, can't hurt if I'm in early labor to get things moving, and decided to go back to sleep. And I slept in until around 9 a.m. And then at that point, the contractions were there, but the main thing that was happening, which this video by nature is going to be a little bit TMI, so just warning there, but I started having so many bowel movements that I basically couldn't get off the toilet, like these really severe cramps, and my body was just clearing out so bad that like I literally couldn't get myself food, and I certainly couldn't take care of Esther, and I ended up actually having to call Matt home. He had been donating plasma at BioLife, and he had to come home before his appointment started because I was like, the thing is, poor Esther, poor me, like we need help. So that continued most of the day. I started losing, little bits of my mucus plug, but again, none of that is like, what's it called? A firing gun, a red flag. There's a phrase.
Red flag.
No, a gunfire.
None of those were signals.
One of them. It's where when you're trying to say like someone is caught red-handed, but you can also say a loaded gun, blazing gun. It's a something gun. Smoking gun. That's what it is. None of these were a smoking gun. Wow. Definitely had to Google that. So
I totally knew what that meant.
you didn't help me at all.
I didn't know what that meant.
Anyway, that basically went on all day with the contractions changing less from like poop cramps to like actual contractions. And around 7 o'clock or so, we went ahead and decided to go in because I was trying to work through them. I was on the kitchen floor, like rocking on my, you are distracting us, young man. Yes, you are being distracting. He's happy about it. Anyway, we decided to go in. We dropped off Esther at my parents' house just in case and went into labor and delivery. And basically immediately I could tell that this was not going to be good because the triage nurse was not nice. When she checked my cervix for dilation, she was extremely rough. And I mean like extremely rough. I remember I told Matt I could feel how long her nails were which they were like the, curly nails, so very long. And I could feel the ring she was wearing through her glove. So it was no bueno. And then she was basically very short with me, saying like after about half an hour or so of being on like the monitors or whatever, I started getting really uncomfortable. So I was sort of like shifting through the contractions because they were really intense. And she came in and yelled at me and was like, you have to sit still. I can't get a read on the baby's heart, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, half an hour isn't enough to tell you the baby's not in distress. This is like so silly. And I'm like in labor. Like at that point we had already established that. We just weren't sure if I was in labor enough to be admitted. So ridiculous. Anyway, after an hour or so, she looked at the contractions again, gave me another half an hour, and finally checked my dilation and said I was still at a 3, and that yes, my contractions were happening every 7 minutes or so, but that because they were only 40 seconds, they weren't like happening long enough to dilate my cervix, and essentially said that I was being weak and overdramatic, and that I should come back when the contractions are 10 times worse and lasting a minute long. And then when I asked her, like, what do I do if, like, keep going? I mean, what do I do about the pain? How am I supposed to sleep or function? And she literally was like, take a couple Tylenol. And she's like, I see that you have an OBGYN appointment tomorrow. Make sure you keep that. And I was like, the audacity, which, spoiler alert, I didn't make that appointment. And no, Tylenol wasn't touching the pain. So, and by the way, when she checked my cervix the second time when Matt was in the room, it was so much gentler and it didn't hurt at all. And so either I was more dilated or she was like intentionally rougher whenever I was by myself. We'll never really know. Anyway, so we went back, we went to Waffle House after that. And we were feeling really discouraged, so Matt suggested we go. And I had gestational diabetes during my pregnancy, so I normally basically hadn't had any carbs since I had been diagnosed. And I decided to just go all out and like get an actual waffle, try and balance it with some eggs and bacon. But I remember I told Matt, I was like, honestly, I'm so discouraged. Like, the doctor told me it wouldn't kill me to like have one cheat meal like a week or whatever, and I haven't cheated at all. And just this once, like, I'm gonna indulge myself because I'm just so sad. And basically, even while we were in Waffle House, there was that, I just remembered. There was a frog.
On the window.
Outside.
And it just would slowly crawl across the window.
I think you may have a video. I think we took a video on your phone of a little frog on the window.
I'll have to search.
I know that's really random, but if I find it, I guess I'll put it in here maybe.
Just a little clip right here, right in the right corner.
Yeah.
She's going to put it in the left corner.
I'm not going to put it in a corner. I'm not that sophisticated. I only know how to like
put it in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh, that's more sophisticated than me.
Well.
Luke, you cannot just eat me.
Anyway, so after that, basically immediately after eating that meal, I feel like my contractions like ramped up a little bit. And I remember, like, I couldn't even walk across the parking lot, but without being, like, doubled over by one. And literally by the time we got to the car, I don't know if you remember, but you were like, we should just drive straight back to the hospital. It's been like an hour. They're hurting worse now. I bet you're more dilated. And I was like, no.
I cannot see that nurse again.
No, yes, I'm not going back there this soon. It's too humiliating, too embarrassing to be, like, turned out again. Yes, he's blowing raspberries on your chest.
He's got a teeth.
Adorable. Yes, you're adorable. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes. And anyway, so we got back home, and basically the instant we got back home, I feel like it got really intense really fast. And I basically survived it till around 1 a.m. when I was just screaming through every contraction, and Matt was like, come on, like, we should go in.
Let's at least call.
I was like, well, just call first because I refuse to go back and like get turned away again. And so he called, and you tell this part.
Lo and behold, who could have possibly answered the phone? It was the same and our favorite triage nurse that had sent us home before.
What did she say?
Well, in a short paraphrase, we are not helping you have this baby.
you're only 37 weeks. We are not helping you have this baby. You can come in anytime that you want, but if you are not dilated enough, we're just going to send you straight home, and it'll be a waste of both of our time.
And the thing is, you know, when you're retelling a story, if it had a negative impact on you, you usually kind of exaggerate it. But the thing is, the tone that Charlotte here is displaying is exactly how she talked to us.
It's extremely accurate. Like, we're not exaggerating. She was very ugly. Matt threw the phone across the room and then held me while I went through another contraction, and he was like, I think we should go in anyway. And I was like, no, not for another couple of hours. I need to be at least 5 centimeters when we go in there, because like I don't know, I just don't want to keep being turned away. I don't know, I just don't want to do that. And so that went on for some time, and so I wrote in this description, and I thought it was a really good way of describing basically how I coped. I breathed through contractions, then screamed through them, then wept, then screamed, then punched pillows, etc. I was in and out of the bathtub, holding my husband for dear life, back in the bed, refusing to let my husband touch me, and I was desperately trying to cope, but so worried of being sent home that I just kept saying, after this contraction, we'll go for hours. Hey, what are you doing? You tell the camera all about it. Oh. Oh. Yay, yay, yay. At around 3 a.m. we seemed to reach some kind of respite where I was able to sleep, and at that point the contractions were about 6 minutes apart and still incredibly intense, but for some reason I seemed to reach like this inner peace where I was able to just barely keep from screaming. And so like we would fall asleep in between the contractions for 6 minutes, wake up, I would just curl and tense up and try not to scream. Matt would wake up with me, start the timer, hold the heating pad on me, rub my back until it was over, and then we would both pass back out on the bed. And that went on for about an hour total. And by around 4 o'clock, the contractions, and this is when I believe that I hit transition, and they took up just another notch, and every bit of like strength and control that I had went out the window, and I started...
The window was not open at the time. The glass shattered.
Just broke through it, yeah. Like my head went through the window in the car wreck.
And it was 2 stories high.
Or at that point, I started screaming hysterically again, totally losing it. And at that point, I think we were both so exhausted, and like I had said no to the hospital so many times that Matt had stopped even suggesting it. But I think at that point, I started saying like I need to go to the hospital, because I had already decided at 1 a.m. when we first called that I wanted the epidural.
Well, at one point, I forget exactly what the details were, Charlotte did say, if we don't leave now, I'm not going to make it. We'll have this baby here.
Right, so that was at 5:11. I remember because I looked at the clock, because we had literally just decided to go to the hospital. And so I had started getting dressed extremely slowly, and I realized like I had a contraction, and I realized that I was pushing like involuntarily. And it took another contraction for me to fully process that that's what was happening. And that's the point when I realized, like, even though our hospital's 7 minutes away, like, once you're pushing, like, wow, you know, you're pushing. I was feeling pressure. I was feeling, like, things moving, descending. I was like, oh, man. So I told Matt, if we don't get in the car right now, like, we're having this baby here. And do you want to tell how you reacted? You don't have to.
Well, I wish I could have been stronger in the moment. However,
you don't have to be embarrassing.
Long
you don't
night,
have to share it.
The terrible screams, and then the crippling fear that I would fail my son and my wife. Well, it led to me breaking down, and we ended up crawling down the stairs slowly and driving to the hospital.
Well, he says breaking, like, you make it sound like a bad thing. You just cried for a second, and you were like, please don't make me deliver this baby. And because I was just like trying to make a decision, like tub or hospital, he said that, and I was like, okay, hospital. I remember I told you, like, I'll try. I'll see if I can make it out the door. And
I
so
felt so bad because she was having the baby. I should have no say at that moment.
I don't think that's true though. I mean, I needed you. I would not have survived it without you. And so for me, it was like, you know, a mutual decision. Anyway, so he helped me get down the stairs, like having a contraction every other couple of stairs. I had to crawl like on my hands and knees, and we made it into the car. And by the time we got in the car, I was pretty sure I was giving birth in the car.
Right. Yeah. And lower wheel shoes.
And like I was pretty sure I was gonna push him out in the car. And so I was literally trying to like hold him in. And I remember at one point I was like bracing myself against either sides of the car, like the console and the door on either side, as Matt was trying to drive like 1,000 miles an hour to get to the hospital. And I remember being worried very dimly in the back of your mind that still thinks about things. Like that I was gonna break the lid of the console because I was pushing against it so hard. And I actually found out later that even though I didn't break that, Matt told me during one of the contractions when I slammed my hand down, I literally
She broke the
locking mechanism switch that you push.
The button.
I punched it literally through the plastic. Like there's just a hole there now because I slammed my hand down so hard. And I don't even remember doing that. It was just crazy. So we are like a second away from the hospital, and I tell Matt, do you remember what I said? Like right as we were like coming up on hospital drive. No. I said, don't even try to park. You don't have time to park. You don't have time to do anything. Just pull straight up to the doors. Because I could feel him like coming out. It was the most insane feeling. And he totally took me at my word, pulled up to the ER doors, left the car running, left his door open, sprinted inside, and grabbed a nurse. And the nurse came out with a wheelchair like a second later. And in the time that he did that, I managed to step outside of the car, and I immediately felt him crowning as soon as I was standing. And by that point, the nurse was there with the wheelchair. And she was basically scolding me and yelling at me because I was still screaming. I was yelling over and over again, he's coming out right now. And she thought that I was just joking, I guess, having a laugh, having a good time. And so she saw, and again, I'm not exaggerating the tone, sit down. You need to calm down. You doing all of this screaming is going to stress this baby out. It is not good for baby for you to be so upset. Just sit down. And so she starts putting her hand on my shoulder to try and get me to sit down. And I'm saying to her, he's coming out right now. I can't sit down. If I sit down, I'll sit on him. I can't.
And meanwhile, I'm holding her other arm.
Yes, he's
helping
hold me up again. So I'm being pushed down on one side and held up on the other side, and I'm sort of squatting, and I feel him crowning, and I say to Matt,
he's coming out.
He's coming out.
Look in my pants.
Yeah. Here, you go ahead. You tell this part.
So I did. And at first, there was no baby. So I looked up and said, no, he's not coming out. And then water proceeded to splash into my face. So I calmly said, it's just your water breaking.
He goes, no, babe, in the most reassuring way. No, babe, it's fine. It's just your water breaking.
And then I look one more time, luckily, and half of his head is just sticking out. There he was, little man.
Yeah, and he goes, literally.
There's his head!
Well, yeah.
There's his head!
He goes, no, babe, it's fine. Your water's just breaking. Oh my gosh, his head is coming out. And then immediately preceded by his body, he plops into my pants.
Like a slide.
Yes, like a little slip and slide. Boop, 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 down my pant leg.
And thank goodness for those pants.
Thank goodness.
Because they gave him a nice
soft landing.
Good half-second slowdown for me to be able to catch him.
Yeah, caught him. And the nurse, by the way, for a second, still hasn't noticed this. She's still trying.
Baby.
She's still trying, because this happened in a second, right?
In my hands.
Yes.
And her pants.
Matt is literally on, squatting, holding the baby through the pants, and she's still babbling behind me about getting in the wheelchair.
And ironically, I had tried to say to Charlotte, well, no, you need to wear a skirt, you need to be modest. And
yeah. When we were getting dressed.
Having a baby, she's giving birth. I don't know what else.
No, I was with you. The thing is, I remember I told him, I was like, we don't have time. I would change clothes because I was going to put on a skirt over my PJ pants. And I was like, we don't have time to do anything. We got to go. And so anyway, I was glad that, we didn't worry about the skirt because at that point, once I gave birth to him, anyway, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but modesty was definitely out the window in like a second anyway. So skirt or no skirt, it was not a good deal. So then Matt, realizing that this nurse is apparently literally useless, she's not paying a lick of attention, sees a security guard like coming in for his shift, and it's like, the baby's in her pants. And tell me.
And the security guard at first, so he's just.
He literally like trying to demonstrate so hard to knock over the chair. He literally sprints into the building and
he
comes
back
out
about 30 seconds later with an army of nurses and doctors.
Yes.
And about
people
3 other security guards.
People flooding out with like blankets and another wheelchair and a newborn kit with like the cord clamp and everything. And by this point, the nurse has finally noticed. And she's like helping, basically Matt is helping her get the baby
I made
out.
sure that Luke didn't fall, and I held Charlotte's pants down while the nurse was able to reach in and pull him out.
But she wouldn't hand him to me because she was all, the cord's around his neck. And I looked down and I could see that like in the course of his slip and slide time in the pants that the neck had gone around the cord had gone around the back of his neck. It wasn't around the front, and it clearly hadn't been around his neck.
And he was actively crying.
When he came out. And yes, the moment he was out, he started crying extremely hard.
Wow.
No.
Don't sit down. Babe, I'm taking a short video. I'm going to try not to show anything.
Not right now. Hold on.
So he was clearly breathing well, clearly no problems. And
he's just a strong little man.
And the cord was extremely loosely, by the way, like resting around the back of his neck. Like how you would put a scarf on if you didn't tie it, just like around your neck. And she was freaking out, and so I said to her, take it off and give him to me. She's like, hold on, we can't move, the cord's around his neck, the cord, don't move. And like at this point, I desperately wanted to sit in the wheelchair because I felt immense relief pour through my body. Suddenly exhaustion hit me. And weakness. I feel like my lady parts have been put through a shredder. I, am feeling just blood and gore, is everywhere. And,
just looking at mom.
She wouldn't hand him to me because of the cord. And so finally, I pretty sternly say to her, take it off and hand him to me. Mm-hmm. So she just, loops it right off. And puts him on my chest, and I slide him underneath my shirt. At this point, the nurse had literally just yanked my pants down. So just picture I remember thinking this has got to be so embarrassing to anyone walking up for their shift because I'm just there buck naked, covered in bodily fluids, from the waist down. My pants are on the ground in the parking lot. It's freezing cold because it's 5 o'clock in the morning in September, and there's this just a bunch of nurses. And anyway, they finally let me sit down in the wheelchair. Luke, as soon as he was on my chest, quieted right down and, just nestled in. He seemed extremely calm. And the nurse kept trying, the ER nurse kept trying to clamp the cord.
And get us to cut it right there.
Yes, before going up to a
So the thing to mention here is that we had a birth plan that we had already told them.
Yeah, we had already decided on delayed cord clamping. And one of the things
was delayed cord clamping.
So
of course, this nurse didn't know. She was a front desk nurse.
Yeah.
But when we said it to her...
Yeah, I told her, no, it's fine. We're doing delayed cord clamping anyway.
And she
went for it again.
Very, sneakily.
Yes, I remember because she was standing slightly behind me. The cord is sort of here.
She kind of did a side look like
over.
this,
Yeah. So then I sort of literally waved her hand away physically and was like, no, it's fine. We're doing delayed cord clamping.
She goes to try it again.
Third time.
And I'm like, we refuse.
He says, I think he said, the patient declines. And she yanked her hand back like she'd been shocked. And was like, and so she finally gave up on the whole cord clamping thing. Anyway, after that, it was a pretty quick process. They wheeled us up to the room. They took Luke away for just a minute to check him out. They poked around me to make sure I didn't tear, which I didn't, which was amazing. And, hi baby. And then they put him back on my chest for the golden hour. He latched right away. And honestly, even though we were so in shock, Matt, by the way, also got a wheelchair up to the room.
I thought I was going to be fine.
He was shaking so hard. The doctors were like, the thing is, we don't want to deal with you passing out. So just please. The main takeaway is that, you know, when we walked into the door, one of the nurses that was clearly coming down to kind of help was the triage nurse who had sent us home. And, you know, I'm walking in with my freshly born baby.
Being wheeled in.
And yeah, being wheeled in. And, you know, I had to ask for a blanket because they were apparently just planning on wheeling me naked through the whole hospital.
This had never happened to them before.
And so I was like, you know that giant stack of blankets you're holding? Could I have one of those maybe? And they were like, oh yeah. And so I finally had a blanket on me and had some sense of modesty restored. And she comes up and she's got this big grin on her face and she's like, what happened, y'all? Last time we talked at 1 a.m., things weren't so intense. And I just remember I was in such a glow of like just having had my baby that I was like extremely focused. I was not gonna let her ruin my vibe. I literally just completely ignored her, and I don't even remember if like you saw her or remember seeing her.
I saw her. I didn't say anything.
Well, I couldn't believe that she was basically gonna take that tack. And I thought about calling her an outright liar right then, but I'm just not confrontational enough to scream at someone in a hallway like that. And I had just had my baby in like 30 seconds ago, so things were still, you know, settling. Anyway, I think that is the gist of it. There may be other birth videos coming up, maybe doing Esther's birth story, maybe doing a comparison between an epidural and unmedicated, recovery versus, you know, all of that. There's plenty of content to sort of come out of birth stories, but that's the main story of how I did not give birth in a hospital, I didn't give birth in a parking lot, and I didn't give birth in a car. I gave birth in the ER bay, I guess. Yeah. Like 10 feet away from the ER doors. That's like the worst part. Like
the driveway, drive-up area. Not just the sidewalk.
Yeah, where the ambulance would pull up, I guess.
Not quite the parking lot. That was 10 feet away.
Yeah. Anyway, I have gone back to the hospital other times after this for like my gallbladder stuff. And number one, they all are like, when I mention it to them, one time I mentioned it accidentally because they asked, like, where I gave birth. And I made a joke about it, and they were like, that was you?
You're the ER mom?
Oh my gosh. Oh. And like, apparently everyone has heard the story, and it's more rare than you would think. And the blood spot, like where all the...
Stained.
Is still there in the parking lot. I can tell you exactly where Luke was born. But he was born at 5:45 a.m. He was 6 pounds, 12 ounces, and 19.5 inches long of sweet, sweet perfection. And yeah, I think that's about it. So if you have come this far, thank you so much for watching. Oh, I guess I was gonna ask like how you felt once he was born.
Once he was born, I felt such immense relief that all of the suffering, all of the pain, the exhaustion had finally paid off. And now we could shut up all the people that kept trying to tell Charlotte that she was not having a baby today.
Yeah. Well, and I did have to call that morning and cancel my OBGYN appointment. So take that, triage nurse. Anyway, I will say that Matt cracked me up. He was so giddy by the time we got back to the hospital room that once they handed him back to me, so I've been in the room for like 3 minutes, and he's all, while they're literally poking around still to see if I tore, he's like, babe, if I'd have known it was that easy, I'd have told you to get back in the tub. And then he continues on when I'm looking at him in complete shock and awe and dismay. I cannot believe what is coming out of his mouth. I cannot believe what has just happened to me. Where am I? I'm having an out-of-body experience, I think. He's like, for our next baby, we're definitely doing an unmedicated water birth at a birth center. That was great. Maybe you didn't say that was great. That's an exaggeration.
I said something like that, and I said, it's a good paraphrase. basically what I said.
And I was literally like, I think that's all I said. I can't think about that right now. And then we had to make all the funny phone calls to our family, who was basically just as shocked as we were, because last they had heard, we'd gone in at 8 and gotten rejected. And knowing my family, they were probably like, yeah, Charlotte probably was being overdramatic. It'll be a while yet. And then we're calling at like 5 a.m. Some of them, like, we had to wait till later because they weren't even awake to tell them that he was actually born. And anyway, it makes for a good story.
Well,
It was
first
quite
we
an
sent a
experience.
funny text of, Luke is here.
Yes.
And then waited for text to flood in 3 hours later when people
What?
finally woke up.
Yeah. Anyway,
It was quite fun.
it was a really awesome experience. My main regret is that we don't have any footage of the birth. We only have like an 8-second extremely shaky video that Matt thankfully snapped after the birth to like basically prove it happened. But with Esther, we have a lot of like, ooh, we're in the hospital, ooh, we're, giving birth, ooh. We have, video of her actually coming out, and I've always really enjoyed rewatching it. So it makes me really sad that with Luke, we don't have anything like that. But on the other hand, it's definitely not an experience that I'm gonna forget anytime soon.
And
so
now we'll have this.
honestly, I don't think we need the video. All right, I'm gonna finally stop talking before this video gets too long like the other one, which was 1 hour and 26 minutes. So you're welcome for the refilm. But Matt, thank you for joining me. Thank you for.
Thank you
Do you
for
have
having
anything
me.
you want to add?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, I just want to say that you did a great job when I was giving birth, being supportive, carting up water from the stove, massaging my back, rubbing my head, using the heating pads, using the massager, putting on the diffuser, the nice music, all of that. You totally rolled with the punches, and you stayed up with me all night, and I don't think I could have asked for anyone better.
Well, you did an amazing job. I don't think anyone could have ever done such a good job giving birth.
That's very loud. I think Matt has hearing damage because of it.
What?
All right, you guys have a good one. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. Go do something that will change your life for the better. And leave any comments down below if you know of any crazy birth stories, or if they happen to you, because I certainly didn't expect one to happen to me. And here we are. Bye.
Bye. Smile.
Bye.
Bye.
Yay.
Bye.